What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. I'm your host, once again, Ryan Thomas, bringing you the latest edition of the Thomas Take. And yes, just wrapped up part one of today's show, and obviously, I talked extensively about episode 2 of this season of A Football Life, featuring John Madden, one of my favorite figures in the sport of football. Did not realize, how can I recap episode 2 without recapping episode 1? Episode 1 featured one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time. Definitely top 5. You can maybe even make a case top 3, regardless of the fact that he didn't or did win whether he did or didn't win a Super Bowl. This man's name is Dan Marino. And this guy is the best, I would say, if I'm really looking player for player, and I want the best passer that I could possibly have, the best passer, it would be one of two people. It would be Dan Marino or Peyton Manning. And in this episode of A Football Life on NFL Network, Peyton Manning took part in this episode extensively, talking about he modeled his game after his father, of course, Archie Manning. But as a fan of the game, he really admired Dan Marino. Without, being an admirer of his dad, obviously, putting that aside. The guy that he really looked up to was Dan Marino. He loved Dan Marino. He wanted to model his game after Dan Marino. There's many, many, many similarities between Dan Marino and Peyton Manning. Two of the best pure passers of all time. Peyton Manning had to play up to that level, play up to Dan Marino's level in order to break some of his single season records. Passing yards in a season, passing touchdowns in a season. Both broken by Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, but Dan Marino was that guy in an era where passing the ball was not as extensive as it is now. The rules of today were not tailor-made then for a quarterback to throw the ball wherever he wanted, with time, with space, where quarterbacks didn't have to, where quarterbacks, I should say, did have to worry about getting hit and taking tough hits and getting hit hard, getting hit, thrown to the ground by their face mask. The era was just completely different, and I didn't have to be around to recognize that. I could put on just a 10-minute highlight reel of Dan Marino and be like, holy crap, this guy went through the ringer. And that was obviously shown in the episode as the episode went on, where Dan Marino had really bad knees over the course of his career. His knees were just completely shot. And obviously, it was his time to retire. I believe he put in 17, 18 years in the National Football League. So not many quarterbacks have played quarterback longer than Dan Marino in the NFL. I mean, Brett Favre, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, those three guys, those three guys specifically played for quite a while. George Blanda's in there, and the guys of those years past. Johnny Unitas, I believe, played for quite a while. So those are some guys that you can kind of put in a nutshell and be like, wow, this is Dan Marino is one of those gridiron greats. And realistically, me being from Buffalo, New York, me being a Bills fan to the day I die, Dan Marino, man, I couldn't help, and I've always wondered this. I love Jim Kelly to death, Buffalo's favorite uncle, son, whatever you want to, brother, whatever you want to call it. I love Jim Kelly. I think he's one of the obviously he's the greatest Bills quarterback of all time. He stopped Dan Marino from going to a few of those Super Bowls that he wanted to go to so badly. After Dan Marino went to a Super Bowl, I believe it was in his rookie year, and never went back. And I just alluded to the fact that he played 18 years, so it's a lot of trying seasons, a lot of coming up short, a lot of knocking on the door but not breaking it down, where the Bills went to 4 straight in a row. And I have wondered, as a Bills fan, and I don't know about you guys, but I have wondered from time to time. I wonder to myself, I'm like, man, I really wonder. Let's just say we go back to 1983. You have John Elway. You have Ken O'Brien. You have Todd Blackledge. You have Jim Kelly. You have Dan Marino. I really wonder sometimes, had the Bills not been so sold on Jim Kelly going into that draft like they were, that was the guy that they wanted, that was the guy that they wanted to target. It was presumed that the Baltimore Colts, then the Baltimore Colts at that time were going to take John Elway. And, Buffalo didn't have a shot. If Buffalo would have picked Dan Marino, you really think about it. If Buffalo would have picked Dan Marino, Jim Kelly didn't want to play in Buffalo. Jim Kelly had Buffalo, Minnesota on his short list of two teams that he just did not want to play for due to the weather. Dan Marino was a Pittsburgh guy, born in Pittsburgh, raised in Pittsburgh, played for Pittsburgh in college. He didn't really care about that. And Dan Marino went to Miami late in the first round. Jim Kelly went to Buffalo with the 15th overall pick, I believe, or 13th or 15th overall pick in the first round of the 1983 NFL Draft. Jim Kelly decides not to go to Buffalo for 3 years, play for the Houston Gamblers. Meanwhile, Dan Marino is shredding the NFL. I wonder. I'm like, maybe if the Bills would have drafted Marino would have definitely played here from the get-go, I think. Kelly, let's just say Kelly goes to Miami. He played for Miami in college. Who knows what would have happened? Would the Bills have won a Super Bowl with Thurman Thomas and Dan Marino together in Thurman Thomas's prime? It's debatable, and I'm not saying it to slight Jim Kelly in any way, but just for the fact that Jim Kelly didn't want to play here his first few years, and Dan Marino didn't really have a choice. There were a lot of rumors floating around that he was addicted to drugs, and they were all fake. They were rumors that were squashed extensively by the University of Pittsburgh, by Dan Marino's teammates, by Dan Marino's roommate, or dorm mate, I should say, in college. So, really crazy story. When I watched the episode, that was one of the things that I thought. And it's an even crazier story that Dan Marino is a guy that really wanted to stay close to his family. He was a family-first guy, really cared about his mother and his father. His mother is still alive. His father is not. His father died a few years ago. And his dad was someone that would write him messages, write him letters, and tell him that you have the potential to be the greatest quarterback of all time. And arguably, really, take your pick, but you want to get that one guy that you want to build around, guy that you want to make this team into a passing team, a guy that you could slot in at the quarterback position that is a literal weapon of a quarterback, regardless of what talent he has at wide receiver or tight end or wherever it may be. Dan Marino is that guy. That's the guy that you get. And Brett Favre even said that during the Football Life episode. So to see the respect from his peers is really remarkable. To see what he did year in and year out with, some decent talent around him, but he didn't have Andre Reed, James Lofton, Thurman Thomas, Hall of Fame supporting cast. He had some decent receivers, Mark Duper, Mark Clayton, and really didn't have that running back. I often have wondered when looking back at Dan Marino's career, maybe if he had that running back, maybe he could have really turned into something. Maybe that would have put him over the top. But that just didn't happen. The first Super Bowl, he's playing in Candlestick Park against the 49ers, which at the time, that was okay, I guess. But now you look back, you're like, they let the 49ers play in their home park. I guess, who knows if it was announced beforehand. I'm assuming it was. But that is just remarkable. that he had to go to Candlestick, play in a Super Bowl, and I don't know, maybe it wasn't Candlestick. It was somewhere in California, the USC field or something like that. And basically California territory, I should say. And he had to play one of the best, if not the best team of all time. In the I think it was the 1983-84 49ers. Loses and never goes back, but continues to show grit, determination, fire, a real vocal leader as a quarterback, a guy that epitomized going for it, a guy that epitomized competitiveness. And Dan Marino, man, I have a newfound respect for him, what he has done for autism, for millions of kids around the world that suffer from autism, cancer, just everything. He has done a lot in terms of charity that I never really knew. He has his own charity house in Miami where kids are basically rehabbed if they're coming off an injury or if they're sick, or it's his own children's hospital, so to speak. That is really great to see. Anytime you have a player of that magnitude that did everything, accomplished everything he wanted to accomplish except winning a Super Bowl, he turns that into, well, I might not have accomplished everything I wanted to in my NFL career, but I will make a difference in the world. That's cool. I am cool with that. So, realistically, this show, A Football Life, if you have not watched it, if you have missed it, or if you've only seen a couple episodes of it, you gotta tune in, because they don't announce who will be the next episode until the new episode is airing. So, like, during commercial break, they say, hey, after John Madden's Football Life is Wes Welker, and during Dan Marino's, they obviously said John Madden's was next. So, Wes Welker next week, I am really excited for that. That's the guy that epitomized heart, determination, the unsung, long shot hero, so to speak, of the Patriots, coming from where he came from. But for Dan Marino to learn about a player of that magnitude, had this quick snap release, the quickest release for a quarterback, the best arm, realistically, I got to say, whether I'm a Bills fan or not, he is definitely the best passer outside of Peyton Manning that I have ever seen. And he's not from my era, but when I've watched much tape on Dan Marino, I think to myself, man, that guy in this era would be just as successful as he was, if not more successful than he was in his own. And you really realize how great he was when you see players like Peyton Manning and Tom Brady struggling to eventually break his records. I mean, in this era. So for him to be playing at that level in that era, where Tom Brady and Peyton Manning got to literally work their tails off to try to break those records in an era where we see more passing now than ever, where it's tailor-made for passing due to the fact that wide receivers can get away with a little bit more against the corners in this era as opposed to Dan Marino's era. It says a lot. It shows a lot. It says a lot to me that Dan Marino was one hell of a quarterback. The Dolphins still want him around. He's still a part of the Dolphins organization as an advisor. So, good for him. A great football life. There were moments where Dan Marino showed his vulnerability a little bit when talking about his dad, and I thought that was really sincere. Great to see that, this guy still holds his dad close to him and everything like that, as he should, because his dad wrote him some really awesome letters, words of encouragement while he was going through the recruitment process, while he was going through the process of declaring for the NFL draft, and Dan Marino had all those letters in a filing cabinet. It was really cool episode. Check it out. I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take recap of A Football Life. Dan Marino, the greatest Miami Dolphin to ever don the teal, green, and orange. Not a big fan of their uniforms, but I am a Dan Marino fan after watching that episode. Take care, everybody.